Ben,
Yaakov.
¿cómo está?
Yeah.
Sorry for the lateness, people.
Yes.
Uh, and we're going to end early tonight.
This is a late night edition.
It is. It is.
At least for me. For you, it's like eight
It's 8 p.m. Yeah.
prime time.
Yeah. Uh, so let's get going. You want to go first or should I?
You can go first this time.
Okay. Well,
Most
let's
of the time.
start it beor. So to clarify more, צריך לברר היטב מה שכתוב ner Hashem nishmat adam. We need to understand what the verse from Proverbs 20:27 means when it says that the soul of man is a candle of God. I'm not sure I like ner as candle, but okay, if they
How
say
would you translate it then?
ner, I would say light. But yeah, I mean, yeah, like candle almost makes it sound like it's definitely like candle wax. And I'm not sure that that's like, but
Right.
okay. Perish. That means Israel hakuruim Adam, that Israel, who are called Adam, nishmatam he lamashal keor haner. That as an allegory, we could say that their neshama, the higher level of soul neshama, is like the light of a candle. Shemitna'ne'a tamid lamala betivo, that by its very nature flickers upward. Mipnei she'or ha'esh chafetz beteva lipared mehatpitila ולדבק בשורשה, שורשו למעלה ביסוד האש הכללי שתחת גלגל הירח, כמו שכתוב בעץ חיים. Like Rabbi Chaim Vital explains in his book Etz Chaim, that there is a particular place under the moon that is the source of fire, and just as you see that the flame of a candle by nature is just like trying to rise upward, so is the soul of a man. And even though if that flame was able to escape from its wick, it would be extinguished. V'lo ya'ir klum lamata, and then it would no longer be able to create light in the material world as it is. V'gam lamala b'shorsho, and even where it actually is, yitbatel oro b'metziut b'shorsho, right? It would, since it would return to its source, it would be as if it no longer existed, right?
Mhm.
It wishes, so similarly, the soul of a human being wishes to return to whence it comes, which is Havaya, which is Hashem. And even though that would mean no longer being in this world, and it would in fact mean a complete nullification of our existence, in that we would be returning to God Himself.
Right. So I mean, there's a negative sense of that as well, right? I mean, like in terms of maybe phrasing it differently, in terms of wanting to be like with a full spiritual life without being disconnected from the ground. You just become
This is a criticism in essence. I mean, he's
Yeah.
explaining Gnosticism, and
Right.
at the same time, in a sense, criticizing it, to understand that actually we are here in this world because we have a capacity, we have like, yeah, there's a yeshut, there's an existence to us which comes from being separated from our source in godliness. Yet that is what allows us both to exist and both to light up in the darkness, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like when we talked about Bati Lagani Lagununi, right? So God first created the darkness and then he allowed his light into the darkness, so that through the darkness we would be able to see the value of the light. And
Mm-hmm.
that's why when the light returns, so that it shall be as if there never was a darkness, that experience of having seen the darkness lets us value the light in a way that we could not without the darkness. And that's what the verse means when it says, Ra'iti, I saw that greater was Chokhmah Mesichlut, wisdom from foolishness, as Keyitron Ha'or Min HaChoshech,
Mm-hmm.
as light is greater than darkness.
Yeah.
And the Hasidic taich, the Hasidic interpretation of that is that it is greater, the greatness of the light is from the darkness. You see the Yitron through the fact that there has been darkness. And the same thing by wisdom. You see the greatness of wisdom because you experience foolishness. Or to put it in more Sam Harris terms, right? It is hard to say what goodness is, but we all know what suffering is. And it is suffering which lets us know what is good.
Right. Is that like Socrates as well? Of like the greatest wisdom is knowing what you don't know. So you need to have that contrast.
Yeah.
Right. It's a negative space.
Yep. Yep. Weiter?
Weiter.
Okay. Kach nishmat ha'adam, similarly, the soul of man, b'chen bechinat ruach v'nefesh, right? So we have neshama, ruach v'nefesh, right? And nefesh is the lowest, and then there's what's chia or neshama shal neshama, and then there's yechida, which are both higher than these three levels. חפצה וחשקה בטבעה להיפרד ולצאת מן הגוף ולהידבק בשורשה ומקורה בהשם חיי החיים ברוך הוא, right? It is by nature to want to escape from this and to lidabek, to cling to God, blessed be he, who is the fountainhead of all life. Chayeh hachayim, right? Hagam shetihye ayin ve'afes ve'titpatel sham be'metziut legamre, right? Even though they would be completely nullified, ve'lo yishaer mimena me'uma mimahuta ve'atzmuta harishon. Even though we in truly returning to godliness, we would cease to be ourselves and we would be completely overcome in the infinite that is God.
Right.
That is it, by its nature what it wants. וטבע זה שהוא שם המושאל לכל דבר שאינו בבחינת טעם ודעת, right? And this nature is what we lend to, we apply to anything that is beyond reason and comprehension. this this desire, this will to godliness, which is beyond our understanding. V'gam kan hakavana, and this too is to explain is שרצון וחפץ זה בנפש אינו בבחינת טעם ודעת ושכל מושג ומובן, right? That it is not in an aspect that can be grasped and understood. אלא למעלה מהדעת ושכל המושג והמובן, but it's beyond that. והיא בחינת חוכמה שבנפש שבה אור אין סוף ברוך הוא. So what he's saying is, so we have the three intellectual faculties, Chabad, right? Chokhmah, Binah, V'da'at. So he's saying that when we say that this is something that is beyond all understanding, it's beyond Da'at and Binah. It's beyond knowledge and understanding, but the level of chokhmah, koach ma, right, which is that spark of inspiration, right? So again, if you find this, right? So chokhmah is the yud; it's that small bit. Binah is what gives form. And da'at is like the yud, but it's the yud that connects to that which is below, right? So that chokhmah, right, is what we mean. It's the yud as opposed to the hey of the first two letters.
So, question here about nature, his definition of nature. I would have said that nature is something, so he says, is beyond our comprehension and reason, almost like a chok, maybe like a that kind of law,
right?
A king's decree. But also, isn't nature also something that we overcome or reason through? So I mean, it's in our nature to do something, right? We have a natural desire to do things, but we put certain constraints on ourselves. Let's say socially. Let's just take it from there, right? Socially, we put constraints on ourselves so that we don't act in ways that are not socially acceptable.
So when we use the word teva, right? Mm-hmm. So teva is actually connected, and I forget the exact gematria of how teva and is it Aloha? Aloha is 36, and Teva is no. I forget the exact way in which Teva and Elohim is related, but you have. So we relate to God in two ways. We have Shem Havaya and we have Shem Elohim, right? And in Genesis 1, it's using Shem Elohim but alone, right? And as the Chachamim say, God initially wanted to create the world b'midat hadin, and that's why it's Shem Elohim. And Elohim is plural, and Shem Elohim, right? We can talk about Elohim Acherim. We can talk about other gods, right? That is, in a sense, it's something lower than Shem Havaya. But Shem Havaya, right, the Tetragrammaton is something that's beyond existence and understanding, right. And that's why it's the ineffable name, right?
Okay.
And so Teva is derech alul alil, cause and effect, right? It's that thing which can be understood, right? Shem Havaya is beyond and that's why it's grace, and that's why. So, and the the great chidush, the great story of the Bible is Hashem hu ha'elokim, ani Hashem elokecha, right? That these two are in fact all one. Okay,
Right.
and so when he says that the soul in its nature, right, ner havaya nishmat adam, right, in its nature, it's going beyond understanding. He's it's it's going to that pure light which has yet to become.
Right. So is it kind of like the spark? Like so, in every natural thing, there's a spark that we can. There's a spark within it that is connected to that infinite source, but there's still a husk in it. So
Well, nature is that husk. It's
right. Okay.
it's the chitzoniut, right? But he's saying, I think, if I understand him correctly, he's saying that actually, right, the soul has this aspect in which it wishes to transcend. It wishes to escape the wick, right?
Yeah.
Just as, like, what would happen to the flame if it was capable of actually escaping the wick? It would cease to exist. And so we have a something that is incomprehensible. It's in Yiddish they call it the pintel yid, that little spark, right, of soul, which, and as he said earlier, it makes it possible. You see, for example, Edith Stein, God have mercy on her soul, she converted, she became a Catholic nun, right?
Yeah.
But when it came down to the Holocaust, right, she would not deny that she's a Jew. And she went on that train to Auschwitz wearing her habit because she would not deny that she's a Jew. She was willing to die despite the fact that in her mind, in her understanding, she thought she was a Catholic. But but the fact is, she was a Jew, and her soul was willing to die not to deny that she was a Jew.
So you're saying that, like the so if we connect back the nature, so there's a nature to the soul that is beyond reason, and that is the nature is almost like the essence, or it's the creature of the essence.
So I think here he's saying that the teva, yeah, like,
Because if I think about, so another etymological perspective is, if you think of teva, you can think of tavua, something is imprinted on you.
Yeah.
And also you can think about litboa, or
Yeah, a matbea is a coin.
Well, a coin, yeah. Well, a coin because you so, and then a different is also litboa, which is to drown. So it's almost, yeah. I mean, I feel like it's almost, it's something that is, it's overwhelming. It's imprinted on you. It's, you're passive to it, right? Or right, it's acting on you.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
Weiter?
Yalla.
Okay. והיא בחינת חוכמה שבנפש שבה, אור אין סוף ברוך הוא. וזהו כלל בכל סתרה דקדושה. And this is the rule when we're talking about the side of kedusha. שאינה אלא מה שנמשך מחוכמה, שנקרא קודש עליון. So we have, right, we have the the side of kedusha, and ze lo ze asa Elohim. God created one thing that reflects another. So there's a sitra achra. There's a different side, a sitra of shtut and sheker, right? That is not it's different from holiness, which comes from chokhmah, which is called kodesh ha'elyon, which is called the supernal holiness.
Yeah.
Habatel b'metziut be'or ein sof baruch hu hamelubash bo ve'eno davar bifnei atzmo kanizkar la'al. As explained above, that this infinite light gets enclosed in Chokhmah Ilah, right, which is the highest of the Sfirot, right, and through it is Nimshach all the way down to Malchut, right? V'lachen nikra koach ma, and therefore Chokhmah can be referred to as the power of what? Of humility, abnegation, of like koach ma. What there's it's a spark. That's all it is, right? Vehu hefech mamish mebechinat haklipa v'sitra achra, and that is the absolute opposite, right? From klipa and sitra achra, from the klipa is husks and the other side. Shemimana nafshot umot ha'olam, that from it come the nefesh of umot ha'olam. Even though I have to say, the nefesh of as we explained in chapter 1, the nefesh of of Israel comes from klipat noga, right? The nefesh of Gentiles comes from the gimel klipot tameot. The avdin lagarmaihu, that they whatever they do for themselves. Hav v'hal iteni, right? Give and feed me. Lihyot yesh v'davar bifnei atzmo, right? In order to consider yourself something as if you exist without being an extension of the godliness. Kanizkar la'ayel, like we explained above. Hefech bechinat ha'chokhmah, which is the opposite of the bitul of chokhmah. V'lachen nikraim meitim, and that's why they are referred to as dead. Ki ha'chokhmah techayeh, v'chativ yamutu v'lo b'chokhmah. Right? So we have wisdom and life, and then we have yeshut, we have gaiva and death. And chokhmah is bitul, it's koachma, it's understanding that you come from a source that is above, and selfishness and gaiva and arrogance and narcissism, right? These come from separating yourself from the source, thinking yourself as something else, and therefore, b'chayehem nikraim metim. Even when they're alive, they're called. So when, for example, you speak about someone who is when you speak about somebody who has passed away, for example, when we talk about the Rebbe and we talk about somebody who's alive in the same breath, right? So, for example, the Yanuka, right? So you say lahavdil ben chayim lachayim, to distinguish between those who are alive and those who are alive. We don't say להבדיל בין חיים למתים. We say להבדיל בין חיים לחיים. Because צדיקים במיתתם נקראים חיים, and רשעים בחייהם נקראים מתים. Got it?
Yeah, so it's like there's a lack of an acknowledgement of the source, right? And that is
a disconnection from the source of life.
Mm-hmm.
And that is death. To think that you are separated from God, that you are something other than God, then that you're dead. וכן הרשעים ופושעי ישראל קודם שבאו לידי ניסיון לקדש השם. So are the wicked and sinners of Israel before they are put through nisayon, through difficult times, lekadesh Hashem, to sanctify God's name. Ki bechinat hachochma shebanefesh ha'elokit im nitzotz elokut me'or ein sof baruch hu hamelubash ba הם בבחינת גלות בגופן בנפש הבהמית מצד הקליפה שבחלל השמאלי שבלב המולכת ומושלת בגופן. Right? So these people who they are driven by their the klipa from their animal soul, right?
Mm-hmm.
They become like the dead. Because it's the klipa which is in fact ruling their bodies and their selves.
Yeah, it's like telling somebody you're dead. You look dead inside. It's like, and sometimes that happens to people when they're going on, and you can be on some kind of drug, and you're just like doing things you're not doing something that you're conscious of it. You're just fueling another monster, right? That is inside you, and you're not. It can seem like you're disconnected.
Yeah. Besod galut hashchina kanizkar la'el. And all of this explains the exile of the Shekhinah, right? So when you have a nefesh elokit, you have a godly soul that is in exile in your body as you sin. That is Shekhinta v'galuta. That is God's essence in exile.
Yeah.
ולכן נקראת אהבה זו בנפש האלוקית שרצונה וחפצה לדבק בהשם חיי החיים ברוך הוא בשם אהבה מסותרת. So this love that comes from the divine soul, which has this desire, is called a hidden love. It's a love that may be in fact hidden. It might not manifest itself, but it is there.
Right. We spoke about it last week about how you bring that source everywhere you go. You bring it.
Yeah. כי היא מסותרת ומכוסה בלבוש שק דקליפה בפושעי ישראל, because it is hidden veiled, they said, in the case of in the sackcloth of the klipa, right? Belivush sak, right? In the sinners of Israel. Umimena nechnas bahem ruach shtut lachto, right? And from the klipa comes this spirit of folly which causes them to sin. Kama'amar Rabbeinu Zechronam L'Bracha ein adam choteh אלא שנכנס בו רוח שטות. A person does not come to have a sin unless a spirit of folly has overtaken him.
Mhm.
Because in his essence, he wants to do that which is what God wants. אלא שגלות הזה לבחינת חוכמה אינה אלא לבחינת מתפשטת ממנה בנפש כולה להחיותה. But this exile of the faculty of chokhmah affects only that aspect of it which is diffused through the nefesh and animates it with divine vitality.
Yeah,
So he's saying that the actual essence itself, right, because that which is truly holy can never actually, so just to clarify for myself, and hopefully this clarifies for you. So when we talk about the worlds of emanation, Atzilut, before the break, before Bria, creation, Yetzirah, and Asiyah, of creation, formation, and action, it is impossible for a sin to extend all the way beyond Bria into Atzilut, because there is only holiness there. And similarly, a soul that has its mekor, has its ultimate source in Atzmut Mahut, in God Himself, only to the extent that it extends into His body and extends into this world of creation, formation, and action, can it be in Galut. And that's why when we talk about it, we talk about Shchinta Begaluta, because Shchina is the lower aspect.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
אבל שורש ועיקר של בחינת חוכמה שבנפש האלוקית הוא במוחן, ואינה מתלבשת בלבוש שק דקליפה שבלב, בחלל השמאלי בבחינת גלות ממש. But a person's wisdom has its root in the mochen, in the intellect, as it were, in the brain, and therefore it can never be enclosed in the klipa. Rak shehi bebechinat shena barashayim. Rather, it is as if it is sleeping in the wicked. Ve'eina pe'ulet pe'ulata bahen, and it's not capable of doing its job regarding them. Kol zman she'asukim bada'atam ubinatam beta'avot ha'olam.
Distracted.
Yeah, they're distracted by this world, right? They are not revealing the chokhmah that actually animates them.
I feel like, yeah, I can definitely see that. I really feel that about just listening to people and myself about how you're always trying to find something to. I mean, it's kind of like this search for meaning. It's kind of like the same thing, but you're always trying to find something to distract you.
It's funny.
I remember this Woody Allen talking about this as this quote about like just find things to distract you. He just like that's just how he to prevent himself from thinking of dying. He just tries to distract himself by making movies, and that kind of always struck me. I'm like, okay, I need to find that distraction because I really like Woody Allen, and I really liked him when I was young.
You
too.
poor thing.
Yeah. No, I still like him though. But there's something with this distraction that I also that is almost like, I know that some people talk about procrastination or being bored as actually something that's positive,
Mm-hmm.
because it's like taking, because you need to, if you keep distracting you with things, you don't get to feel you don't get closer to the source. You don't, you get all these, the curtains, these cloths, or all these things that are always there to separate you from something that is, and at least in what we're saying here is like something that is more pure, more close, um, to the source. So I feel like that's definitely something that I get the sense of as well.
Earlier this morning, I was talking to Max about therapy, and I actually brought this up. Unless a person is a psychopath, and then God knows. But generally, for most people, when you get them to actually think, right, they
Mm-hmm.
know what's right and what's wrong. They know what they should do and what they shouldn't do, right? And one of the things when somebody would argue with me about Torah back when I was doing campus shlichus, right? I was on campus talking to college students.
Yeah.
One of the things I would say is like, I'm not telling you if you don't believe in that keeping kosher, then don't keep kosher. That's not what I'm telling you. I'm telling you do the things you believe are right. Do the things you believe are right. You believe it's right to get up at 7 in the morning and go exercise and maybe meditate and maybe do a little prayer and like go volunteer or whatever. Just do those things. You know, I'm not asking you to like, if you don't believe that putting on tefillin is okay, don't put on tefillin. I would like you to put on tefillin. I think you should put on tefillin. But that's not what I'm asking. I'm asking you to do what you think is right.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm telling you that I have emunah. I sincerely believe that in doing those correct, right things, you will in fact come to
A
the,
natural realization.
yeah. And honestly, like in therapy, like that's what 90% of therapy is, just listening to a person and restating what they themselves are saying.
Right. I thought you were going to say, so I totally agree, that resonates. And I also thought you were going to say that part of therapy is, where you go and you let the, if you're the therapist, you let the other person speak, and you just listen, and then they stop talking, and you might not say anything, and then they'll keep talking about something else, and you might not say anything, and then they'll keep talking about something else, and then eventually, all those distractions move past them, and then they're like, oh, you know what, here's this thing, and then they blow up, right? And so you need to, and so that's what the I spoke about with the procrastination, or getting bored. You need to go through these levels of like, what now, what now, what now, what now, and then you get there, right? It's the same thing with fasting, right? It's the same pattern, where your body is like, okay, what are we eating? Are we eating? Should I burn this? Should I burn that? What am I doing? And then you get to something, and then something else happens, right? So
Yeah. Uh, okay. So, Azai hi ne'ora mishnata. Therefore, oh, hold on. Wait, I skipped. כשבאים לידי ניסיון בדבר אמונה, שהיא למעלה מהדעת, right? When it comes that you're a test of something that is fundamental to our faith, right? Which is beyond understanding. ונגע עד הנפש, and it touches the very soul. לבחינת חוכמה שבה, and the faculty of chokhmah that is there. Azai hi ne'ura mishnata, right? Then she awakes from her sleep. ופועלת פעולתה בכוח השם המלובש בה, right? To exert its influence. וכמו שכתוב, ויקץ כישן השם. As it is written, then the Lord awakened as one out of sleep.
Yeah, so you
Psalm
were
78, 65. Yeah.
yeah. So and you mentioned the story of Ida Stein,
Edith Stein, yeah.
Edith Stein, which I think it relates to this. And also, I remember that you spoke about the CNN journalist in Syria, right?
Did I?
Right. So these are just crazy stories that you hear. And I didn't know about that. About the you mentioned how. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I think you're talking about Daniel Pearl. I don't think he was in Syria.
I don't know. Yeah, I just said Syria because of ISIS.
If I remember correctly, I think you're thinking of Daniel Pearl. I forget where exactly he might. I think it might have been Afghanistan or even Pakistan. But anyway, he was caught and he was murdered brutally. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
but he professed a faith that he never did before, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Lola nu Hashem.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. לעמוד בניסיון באמונת השם בלי שום טעם ודעת ושכל המושג לו. That they would be able to withstand at something that's just beyond any understanding. להתגבר על הקליפות ותאוות עולם הזה בהתר ובאיסור שהורגל בהם ולמאוס בהם. And to prevail over the husks and over his desires toward worldly matters, both permitted and forbidden, which he is accustomed to indulge and even to despise them. V'livchor lo Hashem l'chelko l'goralo, and to choose God as his portion, limsor lo nafsho al kedushat shamo, to allow himself to be to offer himself as a um, korban to kedushat Hashem,
Mm-hmm.
right? To be set to die in sanctification of the name. Yeah, a martyr. Va'af ki haklipot gavru alav kol yamav. And even though he was a sinner all of his days, v'lo yachol lahem, and he was not able to live a pure life. Kama amar Rabbeinu Zechron L'Bracha sheharashayim hem bereshut liban. Like the rabbis explain that a evil person is under the control of his heart. Mikol makom keshabau liidei nisayon b'dvar emunah b'Hashem echad. When it comes to denying God's oneness, sheyesudata b'harei kodesh, that its foundation is in the heights of holiness. He bechinat chokhmah shebenefesh ha'elokit sheba melubash or ein sof baruch hu, right? That it is from the chokhmah of the godly soul, right? That the infinite light is enclosed in it. Harei kol haklipot betelim umevutalim v'hayu kalo hayu mamash lifnei Hashem. Then all of the husks are shattered and nullified, as if they never were. Kedichtiv kol hagoyim ka'ayin negdo. Like it says that all of the nations are like nothing before him. Ktiv ki hine oivecha Hashem ki hine oivecha yovedu. Yitpardu kol pa'alei aven. Right? That behold, all of your enemies, Hashem, they will be destroyed. Kehimes donag mipnei esh yovedu. Uchtiv harim kedonag namasu. Right? As wax melts before fire, so shall the wicked perish, and the hills melted like a wax. V'hinei or Hashem ein sof baruch hu hamelubash b'chokhmah שבנפש גדול ועצום כוחו כל כך, and this is the great power of the light of Hashem that is enclosed in wisdom. לגרש ולדחות הסטרה אחרא והקליפות שלא יוכלו להיגעו אפילו בלבושיו שהם מחשבה דיבור ומעשה של אמונת השם אחד. That as to banish and repel the sitra achra and the klipot, the husk, so that they are unable to touch even its garments, namely the thought, speech, and action that express one's faith in the unity of God. Right. So this particular mitzvah, it's of a light that it's not possible, right? For it to be דהיינו, לעמוד בניסיון למסור נפשו אפילו שלא לעשות רק איזה מעשה לבד נגד אמונת השם אחד, כגון להשתחוות לעבודה זרה, אף שאינו מאמין בה כלל בליבו. Right? So a person doesn't, so they're willing, and this is something lo aleinu that we have seen many times in Jewish history, that people who weren't necessarily that involved in Judaism or that strongly Jewish were willing to die rather than bow before some form of idolatry. וכן שלא לדבר תועה חס ושלום על אחדות השם, אף שאין פיו וליבו שווין, רק ליבו שלם באמונת השם. And even to speak lies about God, וזה נקרא דחילו, that he realizes in his heart aren't true. וזהו נקרא דחילו הכלל הנכלל ברחימו. And this is called the fear contained in love. שהיא אהבה הטבעית שבנפש האלוקית שבכללות ישראל, שחפצה רצונה בטבעה לדבק בשורשה ומקורה אור אין סוף ברוך הוא.
Right, אהבה טבעית, yeah. So this invokes nature, a natural law.
Yeah, that he was talking about at the beginning. שמפני אהבה זו ורצון זה, היא יראה ומפחדת בטבעה מנגוע בקצה טומאת עבודה זרה, חס ושלום, שהיא נגד אמונת השם אחד. Again, I mean, he's saying the same thing, that by nature it wouldn't come to this. אפילו בלבושיה החיצוניים שהם דיבור ומעשה, בלי אמונה בלב כלל. That even in action, even though they know that it is false itself.
Yeah. So if we want to stop it cleanly, can probably stop it now.
Yeah.
I guess that would be the responsible thing to do.
That might be the responsible thing to do.
Because I just need to wake up early in the morning.
You need to wake up early in the morning, and your wife does in fact need you to be supportive of her in her great works as a. She's a doctor now.
She's a doctor.
She's a doctor. Your wife's a doctor. Your name's Ben. You're halfway there to being Ben Shapiro.
Ben Shapiro.
Yeah, you just have to start talking faster and wear a yarmulke and speak all kinds of kafira, and you'll be there.
I'm probably taller than him.
You're probably just a tiny bit taller than him. Yeah.
I'm like average height. I feel like he's below average height.
He is below average height. Yes.
How's Shadow doing?
Shadow's doing pretty well. Happy is not very happy with the fact that I'm going to work these days a lot, and these hours are not conducive to her wishes. I've been leaving the house more and more,
Yeah.
and she doesn't like me leaving.
Yeah, she used to hang out with you in the office too, right?
A little bit. Not. I mean, my old apartment for some reason it was smaller, and I think she was more comfortable with me uh, leaving her there.
Mm-hmm.
And with COVID, I started being home even more.
Yeah.
And then when we moved to this place, which is a lot larger, she's just become even more clingy. And now I don't for a long time, like I wasn't going to the office or anything. And yeah, she's become increasingly clingy. And so I ended up having to kennel her when I leave because she destroyed two door frames trying, yeah. And she destroyed two kennels, and now there's a kennel she can't destroy, but she still it gets very, very anxious when I leave.
Yeah.
So she's just gonna have to get used to it. It's funny, I was talking to somebody and I'm like, if she would just calm down and recognize, like, I'll be back, then in fact, I wouldn't even have to put her in the kennel.
Mhm.
But yeah, sometimes the fact that we don't understand what's going on and I have no way of like clarifying to her, hey, silly, you just need to be a little bit more calm. You're gonna be fine. I'll be back home. Don't worry. And so now that I got home, she's sleeping under my desk.
Yeah. Yeah, routines are very important for both dogs and cats. I mean, I can definitely see that with my cats as well.
And humans.
That is also true. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's one of the things that kind of makes me unhappy is for some reason, well, I know the reason. The reason is that because of all the materialism in the 20th century, all of the communism and the fascism and the eugenics, people had a reaction towards that materialism because um, it was obviously immoral, but then that caused people to have a rejection of any sort of like scientific, like, oh, guess what, human
Behaviorism.
beings, yeah, like human behaviors are like, we can study human behaviors by studying animals. And people, there's been a ridiculous reaction, which hopefully it actually looks like is swinging back, um, and will swing back. But yeah, there's been a lot of silliness in the world. What can I say?
Yeah. No, I see what you mean. There's a right balance of how to draw those conclusions, or ideas from what we can see from animals and what we think we can predict about human behavior and how to influence it.
Look, materialism is obviously bankrupt, but that should not be a reason to reject uh, science. It should be a reason to um, embrace a spirituality that is more informed than simply materialism, but is informed. And I mean, this is John Vervaeke's whole thing with a post-nominalist Neoplatonism.
Mm-hmm. You should also join our book club. We were talking about this, Rabbi Sachs.
I
Even though
haven't
nobody
finished
likes him.
that book, And I am actually bowing out of the book club because I just don't have time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I spent 4 hours today volunteering at Catholic Charities
Mm-hmm.
and 3 hours volunteering. I mean, I'm doing hours for
You're
my
doing hours, yeah.
classes and
Mhm.
gaining experience and stuff, but like, and then I have all my classes, and I'm like, yeah, I'm being silly.
How are those experiences?
I mean, to some extent, I am learning things, but that's kind of because I have decided to ignore what the supposed education system is trying to teach me, and to do things my own way.
Well, you're doing things your own way, but like in a practical,
Right.
right,
Yeah.
you know,
So
on your own and
yeah, like
creating a method.
I'm actually trying to like learn something despite all of my classes.
Yeah.
It would be nice if I learned something despite all my classes.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Cool. And I mean that's all gonna come. Hopefully, it's all gonna help out with the Fountain of Comfort.
Yeah. So Fountain of Comfort is hopefully going to actually become a way of cutting through. Like this is what I was actually talking to Max about earlier today.
Mm-hmm.
Is um, like I see like I'm doing two different counseling routes, right? And I'm seeing all the requirements, and I see the reason for the requirements, but I also see why like the requirements are being bypassed because, and just because somebody meets the requirement doesn't mean they're actually qualified, because there's a complete misalignment between the way things are done and what actually would get the work done. And I am hoping that Fountain of Comfort will be a resource. So I want to eventually have some sort of thing that comes out of Fountain of Comfort where it's a listing of competent, actually competent counselors. And it doesn't matter if it's MFT, MSW, whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's actually a certification that this person is competent. And if you go to this person, if their methodology isn't going to work for you, they will move you, they will tell you to go to someone else,
Right.
that they are actually that, because so I'm doing substance abuse and MSW right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I can confidently say that just because you're a certified substance abuse counselor or a licensed clinical social worker, that does not actually mean that you are in any way qualified to do the job.
So my question is, do people the people that are going to work at Fountain of Comfort, do you see them as you're going to select people that are already acting in ways that you think that are qualified, or there is going to be some kind of an experience in Fountain of Comfort on the provider side that is going to enable them to?
So I am thinking of Fountain of Comfort as eventually being some sort of like teaching clinic,
Mm-hmm.
right? Which will um, help people find training and help people find people who are competent and hopefully provide, like, the thing is, it's deliberately nebulous because I think we've identified a problem that is in need of a solution, and that doesn't mean I know what the solution is. That means we are trying to bring distributed cognition to bear on this problem. And frankly, the Jerusalem conference, which I have been assured will be announced next week.
Wow.
I have been assured.
I gotta buy my. Let me know. I gotta buy my ticket. I want to see
So
family.
the date has been pushed off. No official announcement yet, but the date is the weekend of March 8th, probably. And yeah, so um, and we'll see who is exactly involved and what not. But
Are we gonna do a Tanya session there?
so it's funny, but I was like, I was talking to Yosef about possible stuff. I was like, okay, so Saturday morning, we're gonna have to daven Shachrit earlier because like maybe some people are gonna go do Christian stuff or whatever, so we can't like. But Tanya before Shachrit, I mean, Hasidus before Shacharis on Shabbos. I mean, and then so it's um, it's Parshat Vayakel.
Okay.
It's Shabbat Shekalim,
Mm-hmm.
and it's Shabbat Machar Chodesh, meaning it's Erev Rosh Chodesh, Mevarchen et HaChodesh,
Okay.
but it's, hey, Chazi, oh, Chazi, you're on. I'm going to, as soon as this ends, I'm going to talk to you. But so, like, it looks like Zevi Slavin will probably be there. And so a Verbringen for Soda Shlishit. Zevi can Verbring for us. And yeah, you're gonna have to memorize all the Rebbe's Nigunim.
So I need to prepare.
I'm telling you that the Nigun Lechatchila Reber is my favorite Nigun. And I have zero musical ability whatsoever, so I'm not going to subject you to my rendition of Lechatchila Reber.
The Persian rendition?
Exactly. But Lechatchila Reber and Tzama Lecha Nafshi, the Rebbe's, which Matisyahu did a wonderful version, even though he misspelled. Like, he transliterated Tzama Lecha Nafshi, he transliterated it Tzama Lechol Nafshi.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Right.
So, like, every time I see that, I'm like, and you have to search for the wrong thing in order to get the correct one on YouTube.
Yeah.
Which kills me. But yeah, Tzama Lecha Nafshi. Kama Lecha Basari. Be'eretz Sia Ve'ayef Bli Mayim. Ken B'Kodesh Chaziticha Lirot Uzcha Uchvodecha.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's one of the few nigunim that the Rebbe composed.
Interesting. Yeah,
we're gonna have to learn all of them.
Yeah, I need to learn all of them
because all of the Gentiles at the Jerusalem conference, like, they're not going to be able to carry the tunes. They're not going to be able to do the singing. It's the Jews are going to have to carry the entire group. Donnie will do it. Donnie will take care of it. Yeah. Okay,
I'm sure he knows all the songs by heart.
All the Chabad Nigunim. Yeah, I am sure that there are people in Ner Israel who will tear kriya if they hear that Donnie is singing Chabad Nigunim at a Verbringen. Yes.
Hmm.
Okay, I am going to end the broadcast.
That's good. Thank you.